Good morning to Count Corla, and I'll join in with the other TDs in extending my best Christmas wishes to people. I would say that at this point, and I think we can say it across society, we're exhausted. We've learned more about the Greek alphabet than I think any of us cared to learn, and the sooner we forget it, the better. And I know that people within the healthcare system are exhausted, and people within the education system. And I'll stick to the education system. I'll stick to what I know best. But that's not at all to say that I don't acknowledge the work of our frontline healthcare workers. And they're exhausted from the daily in and out of dealing with COVID. But they're exhausted as well from that kind of low-level anxiety that I think we're all experiencing, but is I think doubly potent when you're in a classroom of 30-odd children. And you have that low-level worry about your own health and the health of the people around you. And that's the teachers, that's the actual teachers in the classroom. The SNAs are also the same. The school secretaries, I was talking to my own school secretary recently, and the number of phone calls she has to make to harassed parents who have to find their way in because their children have the sniffles or whatever else. And that all factors in and keys in, and principals as well. And I would acknowledge what Deputy O'Leary was saying, that there has been a huge extra burden placed on principals this year. But I would say, and his colleague said earlier in the debate, Deputy Culnan said governments must acknowledge when they get it wrong, but I think opposition must acknowledge when we get it right. The vaccination rate here in Ireland is among the best in the world. I would disagree slightly about the HEPA filters. I do think the minor work scheme is the way to do it because principals are used to using it. I would agree with you, Deputy O'Leary, that if we could streamline the advice, because we can't expect principals to be ventilation experts, but I do think the minor work scheme is the way to do it. You know yourself, principals are used to that format, and it's a good way of getting it to them. And it's affecting the way people teach at this time of year. This is usually a joyous time of year in teaching. Everybody's crammed in for the Christmas concert or for the play or whatever else it is. And unfortunately, we've had to atomise our children out in a way that doesn't come naturally to people who choose to teach in a primary school setting. Also, and this is something we're getting right, the 3rd to 6th class children and the masking. That was difficult to bring in. It kind of goes contrary to what I'd like to be doing with my own children. The children have taken to it. There's no problem. My own boy's heading in with his mask on. He's used to it. I would say we've reacted as best we can to the substitute shortage, I think. It is extremely difficult. There's a straight-up staffing problem in terms of getting enough substitute teachers in place. I would reiterate something that, and it was a suggestion Deputy O'Riordan made earlier, and there wasn't a Minister for Education in the House to hear it. He suggested that schools should be used for vaccination sites at primary level. And I think that's a great idea, because we do it already. There's other vaccinations, there's other injections that children get in schools. It would minimise disruption on parents, on teachers. The teachers would be well able to manage getting the kids in and out. I think that's something that has merit and should be looked at. And then I think we have to look to that medium term. I think first and foremost in that medium term, we have to make an early decision on Leaving Cert 2022. I think that the children of that cohort, the students of that cohort, deserve as early a decision as we can give to them. Their schooling has been so disrupted over the last number of years. The sooner we can give them certainty about whether they'll sit a physical exam or have a blended exam like they had last year, the better for their mental health as much as anything else. In your own sphere, Minister, and I acknowledge much of the good work that's happening in primary in the education is being masked by COVID at the minute. There has been very good progress in terms of pupil-teacher ratio over the last 2 budgets. I think the COVID learning and support scheme, the CLASS scheme, which you yourself introduced, there's great potential in it, but of course it's been very much hamstrung by the fact that a lot of our SEN teachers are being drafted in to provide substitute cover. And I think we really have to look to remediate the disruption in education, in particular for vulnerable children. And that might be vulnerability in terms of children with additional needs, but it might also be a vulnerability in terms of socio-economic factors. There has been damage done to the education of our children. And as hopefully we begin to move beyond this pandemic, we need to look to how we remediate it. And in the longer term, I think we need to trust our teachers. The reason that our education system has performed so well, despite chronic underinvestment over a long period of time, is we still attract good people into our teaching profession. And it's a valued profession, and we must continue to trust it. And there has been an erosion of that, and it should be rolled back. And we need to invest in our education system, in our children, in their well-being, in the physical fabric in which we educate. You know, the school buildings, all those need investment. We need to prioritise that citizens' assembly on education and make sure that we're looking at an education system that's fit for purpose. The senior cycle review is important in that. And I think in the much broader scope, as we move beyond this pandemic, I think we need to re-examine the social contract generally. So that across education, but across health and across society. And I think from the general election in February 2020, there has been a massive expansion in the state. And there needed to be. Because it was shown the market wasn't going to respond to this. The market wasn't going to look after people during a global pandemic. And I think as we move beyond this pandemic, we need to re-examine and revise that social contract and to define what we feel the role is of the state in the life of the nation.